So today's meeting we'll be working on. Okay, this is, let's start a new process. So today is 12 July 2022. So
But
the
still you're
main
not
act,
sharing the screen.
note it, I am not sharing the screen, I know. Share it. Yeah, now you can see. Here go files. I'm not sure how many of the July members have seen, but yesterday I have actually uploaded the code for you. Day two, that we have all the selectors as well. Fine, if you don't see it, didn't see it yet, just see it now. Okay. So we are currently in day 4 and we'll be working on exception handling and troubleshooting. Okay. And I have created a playlist for all the videos that we are creating. That's for June, July team. So just click on the link and you will be able to see, and we'll be continuously uploading around 20 videos can come in this current meeting or current team. So go ahead and check them. Okay. So let's understand what is exception handling and how to work with exception handling. So the main idea of exception handling is, or first let's understand what is an exception. Can anyone try to answer this? What is an exception?
Means error message.
So what is meant by error?
Both
What is that?
both run not properly. We have received one error.
Your voice is not correct, Dilip. Can anyone try?
So
Vajrang,
something
basically,
unexpected thing is happening
S-
when we run our code, which is
uh,
not required,
s-
but it is happening.
Something unexpected. That's
Yes.
a correct answer, Shashank. And can I get more answers? There can be multiple
yeah,
answers.
Vajrang. Actually, basically, error means the which causes the failures while we running the process, like unexpected or maybe expected, like business exception, or system exception. That is called error.
Maybe you're going into technical activities or technical details. But let's assume that what is 2 plus 2?
It's
What is the
4.
answer?
It's
4.
4.
So anything other than 4 is an exception. Okay. For a specific input, if there is a specific desired output, and if we are not getting the desired output, then it's an exception. Now, 2 plus 2 is 4. This is correct. Now, in the same way, 2 plus 2 is equal to 22. So is this correct or is this an exception?
Exception.
It's an error.
But what if 2 is a character?
It is correct. Concatenation is happening.
If 2 is a character, then
But
2 plus 2, 2 characters is a string, that is concatenation 22. This is correct, but we are considering only integers for now. So depending on the scenarios, we also need to see what is the input. But for considering if integer is considered, then this is exception. Yeah. Next. Now in our, if you are coming into our coding practice and if you're coming into our UiPath, mainly in the interviews, there can be two questions that can be asked. Okay. Let me just increase the font size so that you can see better. So interview question can be like this. Can you tell me about exceptions in UiPath or in our programming language, and how can we work with those exceptions? And the answer can be simple. There are two types of exceptions. First one is system exception, and the second one is business rule exception. Okay. Now, when we are trying to explain system exception, this is simple. Any exception that as a programmer you haven't configured or you did not throw an exception, then it's a system exception. You can just say that if I said in the program that 2 plus 2 is 22 and it's correct as per the business rule. So that's a business exception that I'm making. But other than 22, whatever the result is, it is a system exception. Okay. And one more thing you can consider is if there is a application failure. For example, we are trying to work with calculator and all of a sudden calculator stopped working. Now, issue is with the application itself. You will not be able to continue in case of system exceptions. If we are considering business rule exceptions, this is on a different path. Business rule exceptions will be created by developers based on the inputs given by business users. For example, let's say that there are 20 members in this session. Now, out of these 20 members, I will give appreciation, or let's say that I will send email to 15 members only, but not the remaining 5 members based on a condition that they did not join this session within a stipulated time. If we are starting at 6 o'clock, the deadline is 6:03, and people who joined before 6:03, we are sending out a success email. All the members who joined after 6:03, we are sending or we are raising them as business rule exceptions. So here the exception is programmed, or you can say we have email activity running. We don't have any issue with that. We have all the inputs. We don't have any issue with that. And we also have the required details to send all the information. But even though we have all the information, business or I asked you not to send emails. Okay. So the actual requirement is to send emails. If there is anything that's coming out of it, that's an exception. Okay, enough of the discussion. Now I will give you two options. I am starting a machine and I'm starting a automation. Now, out of this automation, what exactly is happening is there are 5 notepads that should be created. Now, after 4th notepad creation, what abruptly stopped, or it is not able to generate a new notepad. Now, is this a system exception or a business rule exception? Don't unmute, chat in the message. Text in the message. It's a system exception, system exception, system exception. Now, when this can be a business rule exception, can you give me an example? Like we created first 4 notepads, but the 5th notepad we did not create. When such scenario can come as business rule exception. Just take a guess. That's a random guess that I want you to take. There is no logical question that I have asked you. There is no right or wrong answer for this. Just guess. We are able to bot created 4. Okay, if the input given by business, then business exception. Simple. This is correct, but more specifically, business asked you if the file name is divided by 5, then don't create it. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4 are, see, this can be simple, but we are just taking an example of business rule. That's it, nothing else. 1, 2, 3, 4 are not divided by 5 and the result is not 0. But 5 can be divided by 5, so the result is 0. So don't create it. So that is a simple ask given by a business user. That's it. Nothing, you need not check too much on this, why this is taken, how to check with these details, not required for now. All you need is this is not required. Or business user asked you to not to create it. Simple. Now, for our UiPath, there is something called, there are 3 activities or there are multiple activities which are required or which we are using for exceptions. Activities used in UiPath for exceptions, handling exceptions. Can anyone type in? What are those? What are the, okay, try catch, 1. What are the other things? Oh, super. Try catch, throw, finally, throw, rethrow. Great. So Sanket actually got it correct. Global exception handler is a, well, you can take it as a exception handling, but activities, with respect to activities, we have these. Sanket gets a love from me. This is correct, Sanket. So this 5 details. Cancel. Paste text only. So we have 5. Try. So there is no catch. So here you lose a point. So there is no specific activity called catch. We have try catch. Okay. Finally, throw, rethrow. So these are the and moreover. Finally, also we will not have as a separate activity. This will be a part of try catch. Okay. So you have how many activities? Try block. In this you will have catch and finally try, throw and rethrow. So only 3 activities we will have, and catch and finally are the blocks in try activity. We'll just see how we'll do it. Okay, throw, rethrow, try catch, exception bubbling. Exception bubbling is not an activity, Ramesh. Well, you are talking about a concept, but that's not an activity. Okay, main workflow. Okay, so let's use our activities or let's use Notepad and try to work with this. So all I'm trying to do is sequence. And in this sequence, let's add an activity called attach window. Use application or browser. So I'll just use this particular window. Application. Nothing else. Now for this application, if you see, there is a selector. Open unified target. So this is a selector. Now, what exactly is this asking me to do? It's asking me to check with untitled notepad. If I validate it, this is correct. But what if I add something? If you have started, if we are in the second session, we just spoke about selectors and all. So if there is any change in this particular title, this will not be validated. Okay. So this is not validated. Let's see. Oh, is it coming correctly? Why do we have it? Okay. Highlight selector. So this is not valid. And if you see, we'll still continue. our code is written in such a way that whenever there is untitled notepad, take that notepad. And we just need to add a log message. We'll just try to add a log message. Other than that, we'll do nothing. Notepad targeted. Okay. So now here we are trying to do something like, okay, now this is application. Now we deployed this solution. Now when we deploy this solution, let's deploy it. Deploy, publish. I hope we can deploy it in local machine, but if we are not able to deploy it, let's run this. Let's just run this. So how much time will it take to throw an exception? Okay, so output notepad targeted, this executed actually. So let's see, this is notepad. This is notepad. I will just try to type in some value. Type into. And I will give notepad. Yes. And confirm. Okay. So now if you go ahead and see the target, what is the target? This is the target. And if we just open this one, there is a fuzzy selector. Okay. See, things are working or things worked because we have fuzzy selectors. We can remove the fuzzy selector. We'll select only based on selector. Okay.
So what
So
is fuzzy selector?
okay, now there is an exception rate, or you can say, so if that is untitled, I can keep a fuzzy selector and make it mark it as, even if there is 90% matching, then go ahead with that matched value. Okay, we are not making 100% acceptance or 100% using the same exact selector. So those are fuzzy selectors. We can get those details while we are working with the projects. But here, if you are seeing edit selector, validate, notepad, untitled notepad, and this actually came in as star. We did not mark as star, but this came in as star. File path, this is correct. This is an exact selector. This is not working. I think there is somewhere else this is coming in. Can anyone see if there is anything else? Input application targeted app is fine. This is not working. Attach window application instance is fine. Okay. Okay, let's type in the value, and let's see if things will work or not. Run file. Ideally, this should not work. This is working. Why? Output. Notepad targeted. Application window activate. Put mode we have. Selector. Okay, this one is wrong. This one is validate. Okay, now let's try. Run file. No UI automation activities is able to find or identify even if that's not a matching. So if you see this valid is not available, let's do one thing. Let's run the file and let's close this notepad. Let's see what will happen. It is also opening and starting the application. Let's do something like this. Application window. We will have something called open if not open. Close never, and open never. Okay, let's try now. So all these activities that are auto populating or notepad getting automatically created is based on the new UI automation activities that's coming after version 2019. So these are modern activities. Okay, now this is not working. Why?
You have neither open nor like you have given a
So
condition.
basically what I did is I did not ask it to open if it is not open already. Okay, so it will wait for how many seconds now? If you see, this is throwing an exception, that's a system runtime exception. And if you see here, audit using this one will enable this one. How much time did it wait from this to this?
30 seconds?
Yes. So by default, 30 seconds is the time period. Okay. Now here, let's try to keep a try catch block. So the shortcut to add something in try catch block is select that item and Control T will create that complete sequence into try catch block. Or if you want to just add a try catch block, just use try. And there is one more activity called retrace scope that we didn't use. Didn't update. Retrace scope. Retry.
Vajrang, I have heard that there is something called terminate workflow.
Terminate workflow we use it to kill the process or stop the process. It's not use it for exceptions. Maybe you can use it, but it's not a part of exceptions.
Okay.
Okay. Maybe out after completing all the items, you can just close, you can terminate the workflow, even that will work. Okay. But if you see here, this is try catch activity. So this is try catch. Now in this try catch, we have two blocks, try block, catch block, and finally block. So all the code that may throw an error will go into try block. Okay. Now with this one, I will just keep the timeout as. So now earlier it used to be milliseconds. So we used to write 3000 or 30,000. Now this is in double. They changed it. So I'll just wait for 3 seconds. So 3 is fine. And if this fails, then I will. So these are the types of exceptions. So if you see here, there is something called exception, invalid exception, IO exception, null reference exception, argument exception. So all these things will be available, but exception type, there is one container called exception system.exception. Okay, so any exception will come or will fall under system exception. System.exception, or you can just check with exception. This is system exception because it's trying to fetch only the exception values. So that is the reason it's not able to get all the items. Let's see with system. System dot. So if you see in system, there are multiple exceptions or these are the exception types. System exception, overflow, stack overflow, rank. So these all are by default programmed exceptions. Okay, so how can we tell like now we are using log message, right? But how system is able to write it to a log window because the code is already written. Like if there is any log activity and if there is any text, then the code is already written to make the text visible in output window. Okay. In the same way, all these exceptions are pre-written. All we need to do is, so if you see here, everything comes under exception only. Every exception is the part of system exception. So under system exception, you will have remaining exceptions like system invalid, system.invalid IO exception, system.invalid IO exception. And these are just examples. Don't go with the typo type system.argument exception. Okay, so every exception is a part of system exception. Okay. Now, how can we take this as an example? Now, in our class, every student is a part of student class. Okay. Now we have, let's say that we have Naveen, we have Priyanka, and we have Dilip. Now all are students. So this is student one, this is student two, this is student three. In the same way, we have all the exceptions, but all the exceptions are mapped into exception as the parent. Now, if I want to add something, like you can go ahead and get the value, I can just add system exception and I can just add a log message. Project activities, and then let's add a activity log message. So I can just use log message and I can just type in. So this is the variable where it handles exception dot message. So this give me what exception it is. So there are different properties you can understand, but let's not go deep into all those activities. For now, if there is anything wrong in this, catch will catch it. And finally, irrespective of if there is any exception or if there is no exception, this will execute for sure. I will execute irrespective of exceptions. Of exception or not. Okay. Now let's run this file or let's debug this one. So what is expected output? If I just go ahead, see, no windows found with Notepad. Please check if the application is running. Okay, so this is the message that it asked me to do. So let's keep a breakpoint over here, exception. Let's have a breakpoint and see in detail what details can it give me. Now, why did it execute fast? Why it was not able to execute fast earlier?
You change the timeout.
Yeah, so I changed the timeout to 3 seconds. That's the reason. Now, if I go into the exception message, exception level is null, log message is display. So if I just go with immediate panel exception, the following exception, okay, exception dot inner exception or message or source. So if I just go with source, it will just give me where exactly it started. Exception dot data will give me the complete information. I'm not sure why this is not coming. Exception dot message. Let's see. So this is also throwing an error. Let's continue and see what this is coming. Let's add this value to something. I'll just add instead of exception dot message, since I'm not getting all the values, I'll just add exception and I'll show you what's wrong. And I'll keep this for 1 second rather than waiting for 3 seconds. Run file. Okay, it's executed output. So if you just see the details, this is not one single item. So this has a message, and what is the message? UI path, UI automation, next exceptions, application not found exception. So this is the application exception type. Okay, no open, and this has more details like no we open in the Windows font. Please check in and get the details. So this is the actual message completely. Now I will just add one more detail or one more item called, just add a throw activity. So I'll use throw and I will raise a custom exception, new exception. So this is how we will create our custom exceptions, new exception and my custom exception. Okay. Now when I do this one, I'll keep my notepad open so that the first one will not throw any error. Debug. So which one will throw an error? Use application or throw? Which one will throw me an error?
True.
Let's see. So this is throwing an error. Step into. So if you go into catch, again, this comes into exception and exception message. So this is just a message of type system exception. So earlier, what is our exception type?
Application.
Now, what is our exception type?
System.
Exception. So if there is any exception, we can target multiple custom exceptions as well. Or you can just say, I'll stop. So we have only one exception over here, right? This is system exception. There is one more catch block that I can write. And that goes as, this is our catch block and UiPath application exception, application found exception. If you see here, this is the application not found exception. And if I want to target only this particular item, I can do that. Notepad exception is handled here. Let's add notepad exception is handled here. And will this execute or will this execute when there is a notepad exception? First, there is an exception of, and here we have notepad not found exception, like application not found exception. Now, when there is no notepad, which one will it execute?
The application not found.
Let's run and see. Debug. So we had an exception here. Step into application not found exception. Okay. So if we have any custom exception that is there for specific item, then it will directly go into that specific item. Okay. Now let's open. What we can do is, so for my understanding, if there is no exception, what I will do, I will use open application. Use application browser, or I can just add use application browser. Okay, and I will try to give a path for it. So object repository properties, I have the path. So I'll just go ahead and give this path. Cancel. Application not found. So when there is no notepad, I'm asking it to start a notepad. File path. Okay, so this is what I'll do. And I'll also give the selector properties. I can give the selector to it. So it's asking me to give me a selector as well, so I can give it. So what is the error here? Prompting using UI element. Give me a UI element is what it's asking. Okay. Properties, selector. So this is the selector. Click on OK. So now what am I doing? I'm checking if there is notepad, and if it is not able to use the notepad, I'm asking it to open a notepad and keep. Okay, so that's all I'm trying to do, nothing else. Now what we will do is we will open notepad. Now which exception will trigger? Will notepad exception trigger or this throw will trigger when I had the notepad open? Are you typing in?
Throw.
Okay, throw will trigger. So let's execute it. Run file. Notepad is available for us. So what exception is it throwing? Output. So if you see here, my custom exception it is throwing, and we have all the details. Okay. Now what I'll do, I'll close my notepad and I will run this again. Run file. So which exception it will throw? It opened a notepad, right? Which exception it throw? Yeah, application not found exception is thrown. And after this, after it is thrown, what exactly happened? It opened whatever activities happens or whatever items happens in this cache block will be completed. Like it created a notepad, and after creating a notepad, it just closed it, nothing else. Okay, but every time if you observe, this finally will execute irrespective of if there is any exception or if there is no exception, whatever it is finally will obviously execute. Okay, so this is for try, catch, and throw, rethrow. So where do we need to use rethrow? Let's say that using application browser, I don't have any other activity, or okay, for this one I have configured. For any other exception, I will just rethrow it, because if I have exception, I will throw it to a parent. This is trycat child. Now I will add a sequence. This is main sequence, right? So I will just take this to subflow, add set as workflow, trycat child. Now this is my main, which is invoking this one. So I will create it.
Vajrang, if you are not using again one more try catch block,
Hmm.
so whatever throw exception in try block will become the parent for that try catch block.
No, see, if we had this exception handling here and we invoke that in main, but here we don't have any exception to handle. Okay. Now this will abruptly close or terminate the application, throwing an error. So that's what we need to handle. So in this exception, now if I rethrow it again, I'm not able to handle this one. So what I will do, I will think that, okay, my parent has a way to handle it. So I will just rethrow. If I have written the code, I will just rethrow. So what it will do, the same exception, it will throw it to the parent. So what is the parent over here? Main. So if I execute only this code, only this run file, there is nothing that will happen.
Okay.
So started. So notepad didn't happen. Okay, the notepad should be open for this to work. Notepad. So we are targeting the second throw block, right? So the notepad is open and we are targeting the throw block.
I'm saying that if you are not mentioning read through in the try catch block,
Okay, now
okay,
if I, okay,
then whatever you have mentioned in throw block will become the exception you have done. That will become the parent for that block. I'm saying.
whatever I have mentioned in the throw block will be the parent exception. Yes, it will
Hmm.
go. It will go as a parent exception. That's
Okay, if you're
correct.
not mentioning read through.
Yes.
I mean, if you're not using read through, so that will become the parent exception for that block.
Yes, correct.
Okay.
Now, if you see, this is just throwing a runtime error. So never you should get a runtime error. If you are writing some code that is not correct, then you will get runtime error. So if you are seeing this, if I go to main and if I run this again, now I just ran try catch child flow. Now we are trying to run main workflow value. So if you see what exactly it is doing, it is abruptly closing from here, but it's not going to main. Or if you see here, notepad targeted, and what is the exception, custom exception raised, and invoke try catch block, this failed, and it again thrown an exception. So this failed, and so that this completely failed, and this also failed. So the complete workflow got terminated. Now let's see how we can do this. Now I have a catch block here. Now I will add one more exception. So whatever exception that came in from the child, I will handle it here. Log message. So this is the last thing that we'll discuss today. I just want you to understand the concepts more. So exception. Handling invoke workflow exceptions. Okay, and plus exception dot source plus exception message plus exception dot message. Okay, now what will happen? In the child block, it will throw and it will be handled in parent block. So why did I use the rethrow? I can just handle it in the child, right? Why did I use rethrow? I can just write this log message in child block as well. Why did I use this? Rethrow. Simple. Now, let's say that I have created some 20 files. So I need to write this catch block for all the 20 files. Is it right? Like if there is, see here, we are just writing the log message. But what if there are 20 different set of activities that I need to do? Now, if I just write this in this block, I need to repeat it for all the 20 different workflows. But if I just invoke all the 20 workflows here, and if any workflow has an error, it will be handled by this one single error exception or this single place, and I can check the details over here. Okay, so we'll get these details more in while we are working on the projects, but are you able to understand? If you can see here, handling invoke workflow, throw, this is from throw, or this is from throw block. From here, this is showing me that this is throw block. or throw subchild or try catch child. So it's giving me what is the source of the error and what is the exception message, my custom exception. So this is what it is throwing me. So message my custom exception. So let's verify it if it is giving me the exact item or not. Sorry, I need to stop it. I'll just stop. I'll just go to main. I'll run it again. So when I ask exception.source, it gave me the exact activity where it failed. Value. So can you see? Throw, try catch child, my custom exception. Handling invoke, throw, try catch child, message, my custom exception. So whatever source it is trying to give me the exact source so that I can find out where exactly the exception happened. Okay. So this is it for today. And now there is a questionnaire time. So go ahead and ask your questions. Let's get them resolved.
Yeah. So if you have exceptions in multiple
No,
workflows,
Lalita, I want
yeah,
everyone to talk. So just go ahead and wait for 2 minutes. If no one
okay,
is asking, then I will answer you.
yeah,
Please wait because no, other members are always silent. Just wait. What about others? Are you able to understand? Not able to understand?
And should we use this retro only in catch block every time?
Yes, we will use retro only in catch block. The reason is there is already a error message. You're handling it and you're throwing it again. You cannot directly add a rethrow um, in any kind of. So if you see here, exceptions, catches. So if you just go into try catch block in exception rethrow, it doesn't have any properties. Okay, so whatever message it gets, whatever exception it gets, it throws out. We cannot create a new error message using rethrow.
It
Did you
throws
get the
out into the
point?
main.
So whatever it is, throws to the parent.
Yeah.
Yes, it throws to the parent. That's it. Next question. Go ahead, ask your questions fast. We have
I was
only 4-6 minutes. Yep, tell me.
I was Ramesh here.
Yeah,
So
Ramesh.
if application launch failure or notepad is
Hmm.
failed while
Hmm.
opening, so
Hmm.
we do the retry, right? In some
Hmm.
place you change it to default by not retry, something like that, and then you
Yes.
change it the timing as well, right? So
Yes.
is there any place we can put condition to try some count of number like 3 times do the retry and then throw an exception, something like that we
Yes,
can
that
do?
is there. Yes, that is there. Good question. And that is there in here. So there is something called retry. So that's also a part of exception. So now here I will just go ahead and I will add this particular item. Now what exactly I'll do? I will just add log message. Okay, I will add by number space and create a variable called by number and I'll change it to an integer. Okay, and this is I'll initiate it as 1. So the first one will come here. Okay, now I will try it once. So what retry scope will do is it will ask me how many times I need to retry. So I will give 10 times and retry interval. How much time? So this is a time span. So this should go something like 0000 colon 00 hours minutes and then 00 that is 02. So for every 2 seconds it should wait and try. So if it is able to get the value, that's fine. If it is not able to get the value, then retry it again and try number plus try number dot toString. This is used for retry. So what exactly it does? It will check for any particular. So all the activities that are available in this, any exception that can happen, it will check for any exception. And if there is any exception, it will retry. Properties. Here you can see retry interval. It will wait for 2 seconds and it will retry it again for 10 times. Let's go ahead and check this. Debug. So we have the item. So this is successful. Now it's trying to check with the items. So here we have throw block. So it is outside try scope, retry scope. So it will still continue and add the items. So it will rethrow and it will continue. So now what I will do, I will just application exception. I will just close it. Or I will just close this particular item. Don't save. And I will run this again. Debug file. So now notepad is not available now. Now what will happen?
I think it will again launch the notepad after.
No, it will not launch. So if you see here, this is try number 1. Use application ID. So I will just continue. Return number 1. So did you see? Again, it tried. Continue. How many times will it try?
10 times, up to 10.
11 times, because the first item will also throw a message, right? So
Yes, right.
now it comes as 11 times. On total, it will run for 11 times. So let's quickly execute 10 times and then let's see what will happen after 10 times. So what should happen after 10 times?
After 10 times, it will throw an error.
And it will be moving into application not found exception. So I'll just add number so that we'll see by number. Okay, I thought of adding incrementing it, but let's continue. So it's waiting for how many seconds after any error? Can you see? It's waiting for 2 seconds and then continuing again. So after 10 times, it opened the notepad and then it closed. Okay, so this is how you can use rethrow. Thanks for asking that question. We should have covered it. Yeah. Any other question? We need to close in 1 minute. Lalitha, please go ahead.
Yes. So we will use rethrow if you have multiple workflow and you want to handle it at one place. Like
Not specifically. If we already have a way to handle exception in the parent, and we need not do it in the children, then we will use it.
okay, if you use that, you don't have to write multiple times. That's what you mean to say, right? You use
Yeah,
parent.
you are already handling it somewhere else in the parent. Okay, in the interview, there will be only, so in the interview, the main question will be what is throw and what is rethrow. Okay, and the answer is the throw activity will help you to create a new exception, whatever you want. Rethrow will reproduce the handled or the exception that is there in the catch block. If there is already an exception, rethrow will throw it to the parent. Throw will create a new exception. Simple. Okay.
That means rethrow will handle the existing exception.
Yeah, it can handle or it can throw only the
catch block.
Yes, it can throw only the existing exception. So what if we add a rethrow in here? So let's add a main, and in this main, let's add a rethrow here. Okay, and let's try to continue. So what exception are we getting? The rethrow must be a child of catch handler of the try catch activity. It cannot be placed anywhere else. Okay. Is your doubt clarified?
Yeah, got it.
Yeah, thanks. Okay, so that's it for today, and you will have the recording soon, and I'm stopping the recording.